They were the brightest stars of Hollywood's golden age, glamorous, talented, and adored by millions. But behind the lights and fame, some of these legends met tragic ends that left the world in shock. From sudden accidents to mysterious circumstances, their deaths sparked headlines, rumors, and lasting sorrow. In this video, we'll look back at 7 golden age Hollywood stars whose untimely deaths stunned the world, and whose legacies still haunt the silver screen. Marilyn Monroe. Born in 1926 as Norma Jean Mortensen, Marilyn Monroe rose from a difficult childhood to become the most iconic face of Hollywood's golden age. After years of modeling, she signed with 20th Century Fox, and by the early 1950s, her film career exploded. In 1953, she captivated audiences in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. Her charisma and beauty lit up the screen, but it was the 7-year itch, 1955, that gave Hollywood one of its most famous moments, the white dress billowing over a subway grate. Yet beneath the glamour, Marilyn struggled emotionally. She faced deep insecurity, sleepless nights, and a constant fear of being left behind. Her marriage to Joe DiMaggio collapsed in 1954, and her second marriage to playwright Arthur Miller, beginning in 1956, ended in 1961. Despite acclaimed performances in Bus Stop, 1956, and Some Like It Hot, 1959, she longed to be recognized for her talent, not just her image. By 1962, her personal and professional life was in turmoil. She was dismissed from Something's Got to Give due to repeated absences and ongoing conflicts with the studio. Those close to her noticed alarming changes in her health and behavior, as the pressure of fame seemed to take an even greater toll. On August 5th, 1962, Marilyn was found unresponsive in her Brentwood home. She was only 36. While her passing was officially ruled the result of health complications, the circumstances led to widespread questions and public intrigue. Over time, stories and rumors surrounding her final days grew, especially due to her rumored ties with prominent political figures. More than 60 years later, the mystery surrounding her death still captivates many, but beyond the speculation, Marilyn Monroe's legacy endures, not just as a Hollywood icon, but as a woman whose beauty, vulnerability, and brilliance left an unforgettable mark on the world. James Dean. In 1955, James Dean became the face of youthful rebellion and one of Hollywood's most unforgettable rising stars. Born in 1931, Dean's quiet intensity and raw emotion made him stand out in a studio-driven system that rarely allowed vulnerability in male leads. His breakthrough came with East of Eden, released in March 1955. The film showcased his talent and marked him as a star to watch. But it was Rebel Without a Cause, released that October, that made him a cultural icon. His portrayal of a troubled teenager struggling to connect with authority spoke directly to the post-war generation, capturing the restlessness and alienation so many felt. Before the year was over, Dean had completed filming Giant, a sprawling Texas epic alongside Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson. It would become his final performance. On September 30th, 1955, while driving his Porsche 550 Spyder to a race in Salinas, California, Dean collided with another car on a rural highway. He was killed instantly. He was just 24 years old. Giant was released over a year later in November 1956, and Dean was nominated for an Academy Award posthumously, his second nomination after East of Eden. He remains the only actor to receive 2 posthumous Oscar nominations. Dean's death shocked the industry. Fans were heartbroken, mourning the loss of a rare talent who had only just begun to show what he was capable of. Myths quickly grew around his wrecked Porsche, nicknamed Little Bastard, with stories of accidents and injuries linked to its scattered parts, adding an eerie footnote to his legend. Though his career lasted barely a year, James Dean's legacy never faded. He became a symbol of promise cut short, a brilliant life frozen in time. Jayne Mansfield. Judy Garland's heartbreaking downfall wasn't the last time Hollywood would lose a star too soon. Just 2 years after her death, another screen siren met a fate that was sudden, violent, and unforgettable. In the mid-1950s, Jayne Mansfield exploded onto the scene with her bold curves, playful charm, and fearless attitude. Often seen as 20th Century Fox's answer to Marilyn Monroe, she carved her own path with a blend of beauty, brains, and boldness. Her breakthrough came in 1956 with The Girl Can't Help It, a rock and roll comedy that turned her into a pop culture sensation overnight. From 1956 to 1960, Jayne starred in hits like Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter and The Wayward Bus, balancing comedy and drama with surprising range. But it wasn't just her films that kept her in the spotlight. Her life became a media frenzy. Publicity stunts, plunging necklines, and headline-grabbing romances made her a constant tabloid fixture. Yet behind the flashbulbs, Jayne was more than a sex symbol. She had a high IQ, spoke multiple languages, and fiercely marketed herself in an industry that often reduced women to appearances. But as the 1960s wore on, the public's tastes began to shift. Her big studio roles dried up, and she found herself performing in nightclubs and European B-movies just to stay relevant. Then on June 29th, 1967, everything changed. After a late-night appearance in Mississippi, Jayne was driving toward New Orleans with her lawyer, her driver, and 3 of her children asleep in the back seat. Just outside of Slidell, their car slammed into the rear of a tractor trailer that had slowed down behind a fog of insect spray. The top of the vehicle was sheared off. Jayne, along with the driver and lawyer, was killed instantly. She was only 34. Miraculously, her children survived the crash. One of them was 3-year-old Mariska Hargitay, who would later grow up to find her own fame on television. Jayne Mansfield's sudden end was more than a tabloid tragedy. It was a painful reminder of how Hollywood often burns through its brightest stars. Beneath the glamour, she was a woman fighting to stay seen, stay relevant, and stay in control of her own story. Judy Garland. Long before James Dean's brief but blazing rise, Judy Garland had already become one of Hollywood's brightest stars, and one of its most tragic. Born in 1922, she began performing as a child and was signed to MGM before she was even a teenager. But her most unforgettable role came in 1939, when 16-year-old Judy starred as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Her rendition of Over the Rainbow became one of the most beloved performances in film history. Yet behind the curtain, Judy's life was anything but magical. Throughout the 1940s, she became MGM's top musical star, lighting up the screen in Meet Me in St. Louis, 1944, The Harvey Girls, 1946, and Easter Parade, 1948. But the price of stardom was steep. The studio controlled every part of her life, managing her appearance, her schedule, and even her diet. Executives placed her on a harsh cycle of stimulants and sedatives to keep her working. It was the beginning of a lifelong struggle with addiction. By the early 1950s, Garland's health was declining, her weight fluctuated, her mental health suffered, and MGM eventually let her go. But in 1954, she stunned critics and fans with a powerful comeback in A Star Is Born. Though her performance was widely praised, she lost the Oscar in a decision that still frustrates many to this day. Behind the glamour, Garland faced constant battles, 5 failed marriages, mounting debt, and recurring hospital stays. In her final years, she performed in small clubs and theaters to stay afloat, far from the spotlight she once dominated. On June 22, 1969, Judy Garland was found lifeless in the bathroom of her London home at the age of 47. The coroner ruled it an accidental overdose, but many believe it was the result of years of emotional and physical exhaustion. Her passing was heartbreaking. The world mourned the girl who had once dreamed of a land somewhere over the rainbow. But for Judy, that dream was always just out of reach. She gave everything she had to the screen, her voice, her youth, and her spirit, and it ultimately left her empty. Jean Harlow. Long before Jayne Mansfield turned heads, another blonde bombshell had already captivated Hollywood with her platinum hair and electric screen presence. In the early 1930s, Jean Harlow wasn't just a movie star, she was a phenomenon. She burst onto the scene at just 19 years old in Howard Hughes' Hell's Angels, 1930, where her beauty and charisma lit up the screen. Audiences couldn't get enough of her. By 1933, she had become one of MGM's biggest stars, with major roles in Red Dust, 1932, Dinner at 8, 1933, and Bombshell, 1933. A satirical take on her own larger-than-life image. Harlow's blend of sensuality and humor brought a new kind of energy to the screen, one that made her feel both glamorous and relatable during the darkest years of the Great Depression. But her personal life told a different story. In 1932, tragedy struck when her husband, producer Paul Byrne, tragically passed away just 2 months after their wedding. The circumstances were never fully explained, and the mystery surrounding his passing continued to follow Harlow throughout her career. Rumors of scandal and cover-up followed her for the rest of her career, casting a shadow she could never fully escape. Still, she pushed forward. By 1937, she was filming Saratoga alongside Clark Gable. It was one of MGM's most anticipated films of the year, but in the middle of production, Jayne fell mysteriously ill. Her face became bloated, she complained of unbearable pains, and she had trouble standing on set. At first, doctors believed it was a mild flu or exhaustion, but her condition rapidly declined. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow died of kidney failure. She was just 26. At the time, treatments for kidney disease were limited, but some believe her death could have been prevented. One persistent claim is that her mother, a devout Christian Scientist, delayed hospital care due to religious beliefs. However, historians remain divided on how much that influenced the outcome. What's certain is that her death left fans and colleagues heartbroken. MGM rushed to complete Saratoga, using body doubles and creative camera angles. The film was released just weeks after her passing and became one of the studio's biggest hits that year. Jean Harlow's career lasted less than a decade, but her impact was unforgettable. She helped define the Hollywood starlet for generations to come, and her life, filled with both triumph and heartbreak, remains one of the most haunting stories of the Golden Age. Carole Lombard. Carole Lombard was more than just a screen beauty. With her razor-sharp wit, fearless comedic timing, and magnetic charm, she lit up the 1930s as one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses. Known for her roles in screwball comedies, she brought a rare mix of glamour and grounded humor to the screen. Films like My Man Godfrey, 1936, and Nothing Sacred, 1937, showcased her as a brilliant performer who could be hilarious one moment and heartfelt the next. Off-screen, she was equally admired for her down-to-earth personality and fierce patriotism. In 1939, she married Clark Gable, forming one of Hollywood's most celebrated couples. Their chemistry was real, their love genuine, and by the early 1940s, Lombard was not only a star, but a symbol of American resilience as the country entered World War II. In January 1942, Carole joined a war bond tour to support the U.S. military. She traveled tirelessly, speaking at rallies and encouraging Americans to contribute to the war effort. Her final appearance in Indiana raised over $2 million in a single night. Eager to return home to her husband, she opted to fly rather than take the train. On January 16, 1942, her plane took off for California but never made it. It crashed into Mount Potosi in Nevada, killing all 22 people on board, including Carole, her mother, and members of the flight crew. She was just 33. Supposedly, all Mannix could find was a strand of blonde hair Gable would always believe came from Carole Lombard. Clark Gable was shattered. The loss cut deep, and though he continued acting, those closest to him said he was never the same. He would later enlist in the U.S. Army Air Forces, reportedly inspired by her sacrifice. Lombard's death marked one of Hollywood's darkest moments. She had been at the height of her career, with her greatest performances still ahead. Yet even in death, her legacy endured, not only as a gifted actress, but as a woman of courage, warmth, and unshakable spirit. Her laughter, her heart, and her heroism still echo through Hollywood's history. Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power was one of the most admired actors of Hollywood's golden age, known for his dazzling looks, effortless charisma, and an impressive range that went far beyond his heartthrob image. Over nearly 3 decades, he starred in a wide variety of films, from swashbuckling adventures like The Mark of Zorro, 1940, and Captain from Castile, 1947, to powerful dramas like The Razor's Edge, 1946, and Nightmare Alley, 1947, where he proved he could take on darker, more complex roles. By the late 1950s, Power was evolving from matinee idol to serious actor, carefully choosing roles that challenged him. In 1958, he was in Madrid filming Solomon and Sheba, an ambitious historical epic that paired him with Gina Lollobrigida. He was just 44, still in peak form, with a career that showed no signs of slowing. But on November 15th, during an intense sword-fighting scene, Power suddenly collapsed on set. He had suffered a massive heart attack. Though rushed to the hospital, he never regained consciousness. His death stunned his co-stars, his fans, and the entire film industry. No one had expected such a vibrant, active star to be taken so suddenly. Adding to the heartbreak, his wife Deborah was pregnant with their 3rd child at the time. Power never got to meet his youngest daughter. Tyrone Power's death marked the loss of a rare talent who still had so much more to give. He had matured into a powerful actor, just entering the prime of a second act that was tragically cut short, yet his legacy endured endured, through the bold roles he took, the risks he embraced, and the deep impression he left on Hollywood's golden era. To this day, his name remains synonymous with classic stardom and timeless elegance. From silent heartaches to shocking headlines, the lives of these Golden Age legends show that fame often came at a steep price. Behind the glamour were real people, flawed, brilliant, and burdened by the very image they had created. Which story resonated with you most? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you appreciate the stories behind Hollywood's golden era, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next journey into the past. Until next time, keep the memories alive and never forget the stars who lit up the screen and touched our hearts.